WRD Progressive Black Talk Media. Welcome back to our Reality Check Thursday edition. And this is our special hashtag HBCU Week discussion on the value of HBCUs in the 21st century. This is being done in conjunction with our partners at the Council of State Governments, Eastern Regional Conference's Council on Communities of Color. Disclaimer, I am a senior fellow for the Council on Communities of Color, doing great work there at the Council of State Governments. And also the 1890 Universities Foundation. Go to 1890foundation.org, and the Learn for Life College Access Program. Go to Learn for Life, that's learn the number 4, life.org for more on the College Access Program, which is partnering up with those 1890 HBCUs throughout the country. We're going to go ahead and start our panel. So now, if you have questions, particularly if you are an attendee, you are directly in the Zoom environment, you have registered for this special HBCU Week Conference, you can ask questions in the Zoom group chat, and I will relay those to our panelists. Some of our panelists are a little bit late. That's okay, because HBCU Week is pretty busy, but they are on the way, I am told. So you can leave those questions in the Zoom group chat. For listeners of WURD, where this is broadcasting live, feel free to submit questions and comments on the value of HBCUs in the 21st century in the Facebook Word TV live stream comments section. So you can go to facebook.com/Word, watching us now live on Word TV on Facebook. I mean, many of you always leave comments and questions there. Continue to do that for this discussion. I will relay them during the course of this panel. You can also send me an email at cellison@wordradio.com, or you can direct message me or just tag me on Twitter. I'm at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check, but also use hashtag HBCU Week. That is the National HBCU Week Conference hashtag, which is being facilitated by the White House Initiative on HBCUs. All right, let's go ahead and start our conversation as we're waiting on our other panelists to join us shortly. We do have joining us now, speaking of 1890 universities, we have Vonda Richardson, Dr. Vonda Richardson. She is the director of the Cooperative Extension Program in the College of Agriculture Science at Florida A&M Agriculture and Mechanics University, the great FAMU in Florida, which is an 1890 Land Grant HBCU, in which they did celebrate their 131st anniversary just last Monday. We talked about that quite a bit here on Reality Check. So, Vonda, it's good to see you.
Thank you for having me, Charles. Thank you.
Excellent.
Glad to be here.
All right, good to have you. Good to have you. Also, Michelle Harvey is the Vice President of Expansion and Innovation at Learn for Life. She is the director of the College Access Program at Learn for Life, which has been partnering up with many of those HBCUs, those 1890 HBCUs. In fact, she's joining us. Go to learnforlife.org for more information, of course, there. Michelle, good to see you as always. She's joining us from the West Coast, from California.
Good morning. Good afternoon to you, East Coasters.
All right, excellent. Good morning to you. Good afternoon. Well, good morning to you, really. Yeah. And so also Michelle Crumpton Harvey, she is an HBCU graduate. I do see that we finally do have New York Senator Kevin Parker is also joining us. We're going to be bringing him here on Zoom very shortly. He is the chair of the Council on Communities of Color at the Council of State Governments Eastern Regional Conference, also ranking committee chair in the New York State Senate. Also teaches lectures at Medgar Evers College, a HBCU. He's been doing that for quite some time. He's going to be joining us very shortly, jumping on. I am told by the White House, Trey Baker, who's the White House Senior Advisor of Public Engagement, also focusing on HBCUs. He will be joining us momentarily. It is a busy HBCU week. I'm told he's in a meeting with the Vice President right now talking about HBCUs, so he'll be with us shortly. Kevin Ahmad Jenkins was supposed to join us. He should be, well, hopefully, we hope he's okay. So he's just running into a little bit of an emergency. So he may join us a little bit later on. If not, we just want to make sure that Kevin just takes care of himself first. So, but from what I know, he's texting me. So I know he's capable of texting me. So I guess he's going to be all right. Okay, let's go ahead and start the discussion. Vonda, I'll start with you about this conversation around HBCUs. There seems to be, what do you think? There seems to be kind of like this renaissance right now about the value, about the future, the role of historically Black colleges and universities in the 21st century. And do you feel like that conversation is going in the right direction?
Charles, definitely, indeed. And I want to mention too, it's Mrs. It's not doctor, not yet.
Oh, Mrs. Vonda Richardson. All right, good. Please, and send my best to best regards to Mr. Richardson. Yes, absolutely.
Ms. I'm sorry, Ms.
Ms. Oh, excuse me. Okay, there we go. All right.
But
Sorry
definitely, yes, indeed. In the 26 years that I've been working here at FAMU, like you mentioned, it is a land grant institution, 1890. It's been the most promising and exciting times for us. The conversations, the reinvigoration of energy for 1890s and for historically Black colleges and universities. The 1890 land grant history and the tripartite mission encompasses teaching and learning as one, research and discovery, and then lastly, extension and engagement. And that's been primarily my passion. HBCUs have played a tremendous role, especially 1890s, as engines of change. They've contributed to the economic growth and economic development of the Black community here in the nation, and then even beyond our borders. They've contributed to building and creating human capital. We want to meet the needs of the country's growing demand for skilled labor in the areas of science, engineering, agriculture, the humanities, all of those disciplines that we teach at our institutions. Conversations around the fact that we've contributed to opportunities for upward social and professional mobility for African Americans and other communities as well, other underserved communities. Particularly for 1890s, we've contributed to innovative research in food, agriculture, natural resources, and then here recently with climate change adaptation and mitigation. It's a critical issue that's facing not only our farmers, but it impacts all of us.
Right.
And of course, lastly, my passion being cooperative extension. We've contributed to innovative community outreach, engagement, and training the lay people. Extension translates science into practical applications relative to current and emerging issues in food, climate change, environmental sustainability, family and community development, and definitely with youth and their development. And as a result of these conversations, we've seen an increase in land grant funding, particularly at the federal level. Right. Many of our states are making efforts to increase state and local funding. Here again, extension is my passion. Cooperative extension is critical, but it's often an overlooked spoke in the wheel, in the land grant wheel. Extension is the front door to the university. We bring the university to the community and the community back to the university. We translate and teach what's taught in the classroom and take those discoveries in the laboratories back to the layperson, and then vice versa, whatever issues they may be having, we bring those back to the communities. And so the conversations that we've been having and the resources that have been invested have been critical. Stakeholders need to know the importance of this. And just my personal soapbox, we're one of the last standard bearers for addressing the issues that face our communities.
That's true.
Our children, our families. And I do believe we're headed in the right direction. More needs to be done, but we are headed in the right direction.
And Michelle, and to kind of talk about it from your perspective, you're an HBCU graduate, but now you're running this college access program, which is funneling this school system out there in California, like tens of thousands of students, mostly Black and brown, Black and Latino, into HBCUs. And so you're forming this like pipeline, this direct pipeline or connection between K through 12 and the HBCU universe. How do we go about that? Like, why is that important, right? Especially as we're talking about the 21st century. I know there's a big K through 16 conversation too, but it's even more important when we're talking about, our young Black people, Black students when they're in high school level, and then trying to get them to that next level, getting them into these types of specialized real world programs like what Vonda just described.
Well, I can't miss the opportunity to plug the College Access Program. It is a partnership directly with the 1890 Foundation to make sure that students who attend Learn for Life schools have a direct pathway into an HBCU with supports and wraparound services. We are even creating community level resources for those students. We don't want to send a student from California to Mississippi with no support. So we want them to know what barbershop to go to. For the young ladies, where do you go to get your nails done? Where is your type of church? Those things are important. Those are the things that keep students engaged and it keeps them in college. But Charles, what a wonderful conversation about HBCUs in the 21st century. I just want to put some stats out here because I'm a data person.
Let's do it.
24% of all STEM graduates who are African-American attended HBCUs. 40% of all Black members of Congress are HBCU graduates. 40% of all Black engineers are HBCU graduates. 50% of all Black lawyers are HBCU graduates, and 80% of all Black judges are HBCU graduates. So as we discuss HBCUs in the 21st century, I think the question is, what would we do without HBCUs? Because they are clearly providing professional places and spaces for people of color in America. So with our program, we want to make sure that our most disadvantaged members of society, our students who have the largest challenges. We deal with opportunity youth at Learn for Life, and we want to make sure that those students have the same opportunities as anyone else and that they are going to these places that we call historically Black colleges and universities to be able to have a life and a life that is of value.
I think also that was just, you were just listening to Michelle Harvey, VP of Expansion and Innovation at Learn for Life Schools, and also head of the College Access Program, which is working directly with 1890 HBCUs, and Vonda Richardson at FAMU at Florida A&M University, director of the Cooperative Extension Program, the College of Agriculture Science there. I do see that we finally have Trey Baker, White House Senior Advisor on Public Engagement, also works directly on HBCU services. I'm seeing if we can bring him up by video and also by audio. Do we have you? And also New York Senator Kevin Parker just now joining us as well. Good to see you, Senator, who is Chairman of the Council on Communities of Color at Council of State Governments Eastern Regional Conference. Do we have you, Trey? Trey, can we get you? Well, in the meantime, while we raise Trey so we can get him to join in on the discussion, Senator, just kind of like your perspective as a legislator, as a policymaker, and also someone who teaches at a HBCU. So talk about the policy imperative for institutions like that, how crucial that is, really not just for the communities they're in or located in geographically, but also the Black communities they serve, which Vonda hinted at earlier.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for including me, Charles, in this important conversation. And I want to thank the excellent panelists, and I'm really just honored to have an opportunity to share some time with them. And they certainly have made all of the right points as it relates to the importance of HBCUs. I think as a legislator, our job is to really support these institutions. And so if we think about higher education, not simply as an academic endeavor, but really a pipeline towards economic empowerment and economic development, we then see how critical HBCUs are for the maintenance and the development and the building of our community and our economy, right? And so it's not and this is not a new dynamic, right? So we can go back to the late 1800s and see Booker T. Washington and what he did in terms of building Tuskegee Institute. Right. And his idea was really to put people back to work. And even though it was less academic and more, we would look at it today and call it a trade school. Right. But really, it was the beginning of understanding that higher education was the pathway to economic success and, most importantly, economic independence. We have an economy that's moved from Wall Street to Main Street, and we think that Black communities are going to be saved by Amazon. We have another thing coming. Right. And so the main thing is to make sure that the main thing is the main thing. And so building these institutions and providing support for them as a legislator, for me, is critical. And I'm really proud to say that I have been very instrumental, along with many of my colleagues in the state legislature who saw it not robbery, to support not just Medgar Evers College, which is part of the City University of New York system, and the only HBCU in the state of New York.
Right.
And so I think in other places as well, we have to look as legislators, look and say, what can we be doing to support this community? We can't start talking about how do we beat back poverty? How do we beat back gun violence? How do we beat back gangs? How do we do all of those things and then not look to the institutions that are providing the vast majority of economic opportunity? Outside of the fact that in the locales in which these schools are located, they are themselves as institutions economic development hubs.
Right.
And so both as an institution as providing its own economic development outcomes, as well as providing training, because really, as much as there is a new vocational workforce that's coming out there with things like coding and being a chef and these other things that have kind of replaced carpenters, electricians, and plumbers, right? But the reality is that the vast majority of the jobs, particularly in our urban centers, where, by the way, the vast majority of Black people live, are in the fire industries, finance, insurance, real estate, technology, new media, and biotech. And so we can start preparing people, not just for the jobs of tomorrow, but literally the jobs of today. And let me just end on this. Yeah. As we come out of the pandemic, what we're starting to see is that we need a lot more people in the health field and in the mental health field, as well as primary education. Those are not jobs that we can just turnkey in a couple of months and produce professionals on. So there's really an opportunity right now is the moment we really need to understand and see that in the future, we're going to need teachers in our communities, particularly ones that can provide culturally competent curriculums. We're going to need, again, health professionals and mental health professionals, again, who can provide services in a culturally competent manner. And those things have to happen. We have to start training those people now because we frankly need them in this moment. And really, the HBCUs are going to be the sharp end of the sword in that mission.
I was still talking with State Senator Kevin Parker. He finally joined us. New York State Senator Kevin Parker, but also chair of the Council on Communities of Color at the Council of State Governments Eastern Regional Conference, joining us now here on our live #HBCU Week discussion, which we are having here as a part of HBCU Week, and which is being facilitated by the White House Initiative on HBCUs. Go to 1890foundation.org. That's who we're partnering up with for this. Also learnforlife.org, one of our partners making this very possible. The Council of State Governments, Eastern Regional Conference, Council on Communities of Color, CSG-ERC.org for more information on them, our partner here to make this this whole Zoom environment possible. And we're going to take a break. While we take that break, if you have questions, comments, we'll relay those to our panelists. And also we're going to get, I see Trey Baker from the White House. He's there in Zoom, so we got to get him as well so we can get his comments and insights. So let's take a break and we'll be right back here live on Reality Check WURD. Trey, do we have you? Can we see you in the list of co-hosts, but for some reason we're not getting, it's not on our end, it's on your end, Trey. We're not getting your video or audio. Can you open it up? I think we're about to get that. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Trey Baker, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, well, how are y'all?
All right, good. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Of course. And I'm, representing Tougaloo College. So
there you go. All right, excellent. I see the Tougaloo swag. Okay, excellent.
Oh, yeah,
all right,
yeah.
Thank you.
Just done doing an event with the vice president.
All right, excellent. Okay, no, I know you're busy on the go, so stand by. We're in a break, and then we're gonna come back, and I'm gonna go to you, Trey. Okay.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And Trey, you may have met some folks around. You got New York State Senator Kevin Parker up in New York, Trey Baker, and Vonda Richardson's out of FAMU. She's the director of the Cooperative Extension Program at FAMU. And Michelle Crumpton Harvey is the head of the College Access Program, which is linked up to HBCUs throughout the 1890 universities for Learn for Life. So that's who's joining us. Kevin Amaya Jenkins, I don't think is going to be able to make it, everyone. He had a slight detour into an ER department. They're releasing him, but he may come back. He said he might join us later on. Okay, looks like we lost. Oh, there we go. And then we lost Michelle. Where are you at, Michelle? See if you can come back to us. That's okay. We're going to start with you, Trey. Stand by, everyone. There we go. There's Michelle. She's back. Stand by, everyone. Stand by. WURD is Progressive Black Talk Media. We're back at it. This is our Thursday edition of Reality Check here on WURD. We're live on 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philadelphia proper, but throughout the nation, throughout the world. Many of you listening in through our very robust live stream at wordradio.com, watching us on Word TV. Appreciate that at facebook.com/4word and listening to us on our Word app throughout the globe. Welcome back to our hashtag HBCU Week panel here on the value of HBCUs in the 21st century. This is a live panel, but also a live broadcast as well. So giving you the opportunity to key in on these insights about the value of HBCUs, the role that they play in a future that has a lot of uncertainty, but also a lot of promise with it as well. Trey Baker is White House Senior Advisor on Public Engagement. And he also advises the president and the administration on HBCU. So we finally raised him. He's joining us now. I know he's got a very busy HBCU week. He's also a graduate of Tougaloo College. And so he's wearing his Tougaloo swag, and we appreciate that, repping his HBCU. Trey, good to have you. And also talk about the administration's stand on HBCUs. Like, how are they viewing and investing in HBCUs in a time like this where there's a resurgence of interest in those institutions?
Absolutely. And first, thank you for having me come on today. I really appreciate this opportunity. One thing I'll start with is just to say that the administration views this very personally. From the very top of the administration to all of us here working in the White House, this mission for making sure that HBCUs can sustain themselves, making sure HBCUs can thrive into the future is just extremely personal. I actually just left an event where we were out with Vice President Harris, Howard University alum, Cedric Richmond, the senior advisor to the president, a Morehouse alum, and all the HBCU graduates that are working in the White House. And so we understand on a very personal note how important it is, and we understand those issues. And so from an administrative point of view, we want to make sure that HBCUs have the resources that they need to sustain themselves. And to that point, we've invested almost $4 billion, just about $4 billion in HBCUs through the American Rescue Plan to help HBCUs to make it through the pandemic. We have to be reminded sometimes we're still in the middle of a global pandemic, and HBCUs are going back to school. We're in the fall. People are trying to go to homecomings. People are trying to go to school to enroll, and so part of that money it's called the HER Fund is being used to provide for technological infrastructure. So if people have to work remotely, it's being used to help classrooms to be able to be safer. And in a lot of these institutions, including my own, including Delaware State and some others, the presidents have used this funding to write off the debt of students. And so there across the board, there's a lot of ways that we will be helping to push HBCUs, but this funding mechanism, making sure that they have what they need to be able to thrive is going to be key to that. One other thing that I'll mention is earlier this year also, there was about $1.6 billion in debt relief from the Capital Finance Loan Program. And so universities who are building new dorms, building research facilities, building new classrooms, having those student facilities that they need, have been able to write off that debt, and then now be able to push forward with a zero balance on these capital improvements. And that's going to do wonders for these institutions trying to keep the doors open.
Hey, real quick too, Trey, just a follow-up question. Just the perception problem that we run into with HBCUs. There's still that inequitable funding problem, right? Not just from the federal level. People still say still not receiving the kind of support that like predominantly white institutions receive. And so how do you grapple with that as well? And also recognizing that they're not just just not institutions that Black students can go to. These are also major research centers that the federal government can rely on for major research and innovation projects, things that the federal government needs to subsidize and underwrite. As we look forward to, for example, developing new technologies and new strategies for the 21st century. So how do we also crack through that perception problem?
Absolutely. I think the one thing that you should look to in this administration is from the very jump, from January 20th, when we came through the doors, we had a racial equity approach that we're looking at everything through the lens of racial equity, making sure that everyone has the opportunity to be playing on the same field at the same level. And so that's what we've done. And part of this funding approach to HBCUs is to make sure that HBCUs are funded at that same level. It's good that we're talking in front of 1890s institutions because so many have such strong research capabilities and research facilities. Part of the folks who are doing some of the most outstanding work in the agriculture field in the state of Mississippi is Alcorn State. They're doing the big work. The big state schools, Mississippi State, are looking to Alcorn State to help push on some of the research that they're not doing. And so, I do understand that has long been the case, that there's a perception problem, but we're going to work to make sure that we're playing on the same field with all of the institutions. When we say build back better, we understand we can't just get everything back to zero. It's not just moving things back to pre-pandemic levels. It's about satisfying some of those things that over the course of time, the racial inequalities that have happened over the course of this country. And so, whether it's something like HBCUs or whether it's Black farmers or whether it's anything else, we're going to look at it from a racial equity standpoint and make the appropriate changes. And I think that's what we've been able to do with this funding for HBCUs. One thing I will say about that perception problem, we have to shout it from the hills, though. Yeah. Like there's so much that's being done, whether it's the Build Back Better program, the American Rescue Plan, the checks that got in pockets, the shots that got in arms. So much good for our community, the child tax credits that happen. But if our community doesn't know about these things, then that perception problem will still exist. And so I think one reason I wanted to come on, and I appreciate the opportunity, is to talk about this $4 billion in funding that HBCUs will be able to get. Plus, if you look at the president's budget, if you look at more opportunities for debt relief down the line, it's going to be phenomenal for HBCUs. And so I'm going to continue to shout it out, and I'm going to make sure that we press internally here to tell everybody about it.
Vonda, going to you too, looking at that, overseeing the cooperative extension program, and because we did get a question or a comment from a viewer here on Word TV who was saying, great discussion on HBCUs. He was saying, address the high-profile Hall of Fame athletes taking head coach positions at HBCUs. Nothing will expose HBCUs more than sports. Eddie George, Deion Sanders, et cetera, et cetera. But I really do appreciate that comment from viewer Joseph Simmons. But at the same time, I feel like, okay, there's been years of focusing on HBCUs and their sports programs and the marching band programs. I don't think that there is, and I think that the time is now there has never really been an emphasis on HBCUs as major elite institutions of scientific research, STEM-focused degree programs, very sophisticated and advanced agriculture science programs. We give that kind of, that kind of emphasis or highlight to PWIs like MIT and Stanford and Harvard, but we have stuff going on at institutions we run like FAMU, right? Like University of Maryland Eastern Shore, like Delaware State University. We need to highlight that. There's a lot of intellectual capital and powerhouse stuff happening at HBCUs. We can, I understand we can do football programs, marching bands, that's great, and homecomings, but we get that all the time with HBCUs. Now's the time in this 21st century to highlight that the other really important structural advanced type programs and initiatives that are coming out of those institutions. Vaughn, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Thank you for that question. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Football, sports, the bands, all of those extracurricular, it is a feather in the hat, but the main reason students are at our institutions are to get an education and propel them in a career, something that's going to pay them long term. And so I believe just in the resurgence of the value of HBCUs in 1890s in particular has been the fact that we have been doing a better job of telling our story and telling the impacts and the impacts of what we're contributing, and then being those vehicles, those engines to develop that new generation of scientists, that new generation of lawyers and journalists and all of that. So I agree wholeheartedly that more emphasis needs to be placed on the tangible value of 1890s, and particularly when you're talking with young people, letting them know that lucrative careers abound in these areas that they've never thought of, just like agriculture.
Right. Senator, so looking from a state legislator's perspective, because I like how we have a federal state perspective here, right? So I want to get your thoughts on, and we did get this question from Debbie Ann Page, who is the director of the Council on Communities of Color. She founded it. She's also making all of this possible for us. Council of State Governments, Eastern Regional Conference, Council on Communities of Color. We appreciate Debbie too for always making these conversations possible. And Senator, talk to us about what can states do? Like, what's the role that states can play? And, whether it's in New York or other states, because I know you talk with your colleagues elsewhere and they have HBCUs in their districts. And so how do you support this more? How do you also team up with the federal government, with folks like Trey Baker at the White House, to make sure that we bring all of this to fruition?
Well, the first thing is I just wanted to give you a slight correction, because when you talked about Brother Trey Baker, him coming on with what he was wearing, you called it swag. That's real, like 2017, right? It's drip now. Right,
it's drip, right.
Right. So we got the
I stand corrected. On, right, so, he's got his drip on. Right.
I want to get you lined up right on that.
Right. Thank you.
And then Trey, holla at your boy. Y'all got $4 billion. Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn, New York, only needs $1 billion. You know what I'm saying? Like, hit us off with $1 billion, then you can break off the rest to whoever need it. Right,
you get some of that Medgar Evers drip, right?
Yeah. We really, we need
get a whole store, right?
We need the bag. We need the bag, Trey. So stop playing with us, right? So just send that over. We'll take cash check, cash app. I'm gonna put Medgar Evers Cash App in the chat. But
I think there's gonna be another formula to it.
Okay.
Senator, but so I'll just say we're not cash apping it for anybody listening. We're not getting a cash app from the White House.
All right.
Disclaimer on it.
But on a serious note, I do want to shout out Dr. Patricia Ramsey, who's the new president of Medgar Evers College, who has impeccable degrees and actually comes from HBCU herself, and I think is going to be directing that college in a lot of ways. And I think that you're making, Charles, the absolute right point, is that in addition to talking about, the Deion Sanders and others who are now, running, and Penny Hardaway, who are running some of these athletic programs, we really ought to be talking about the people like Dr. Patricia Ramsey, who is a, just a well-known scholar in her own right, who could have easily have gone to a predominantly white institution and flourish, right? And so, we do have people at all of these institutions who are nationally and internationally recognized in their fields, and we really ought to be holding them up as paragons of not just learning, but the access that students are going to have in terms of developing their careers. And that really should be one of the selling points, that we ought to be using. But going directly to your question, a lot of it has to do with the work that we do at states all the time, right? We support programs in all kinds of institutions. So recently, I was very proud to be part of an announcement that the governor made in Brooklyn around, it was about $9 million that was given to 3 institutions, Brooklyn College, Kingsborough Community College, and Medgar Evers, do something around health sciences, nursing, but health sciences generally, and that money to use to, expand the pipeline, right? So those are things that states should be doing. We have a lot of institutions here that have state-of-the-art facilities. Unfortunately, some of them are state-of-the-art 1955, and so states need to be giving money, capital money, to these institutions in order to upgrade their facilities. One of the things that we're finding in terms of, and I talked about nursing as one of the areas in which we have in our communities a real need. One of the choke points in our educational pipeline is not really from nursing education, is really from science education. And so we really need more money and more emphasis on things like biology and chemistry, and getting those kind of professors into our schools in order to increase the number of seats in those classes, so we can produce these health professionals and mental health professionals that our community needs right now, and that produce full-time jobs at a living wage with benefits. And that's one of the things that I think Ms. Richardson keeps emphasizing. I think I really don't want us to lose sight of. In our community, again, students are not necessarily coming to our colleges, black, white, or whatever, because they're just looking to get an education. They're looking for full-time jobs at a living wage with benefits, and getting this degree really is a jumping off point to making that happen. And we really need to make sure that we're supporting that, because again, as you heard Ms. Harvey talk about, even though we have probably more Black students going to predominantly white institutions, actually more of the graduates are actually coming out of historically Black institutions, right, in general, right? And she gave you some of the statistics as relate to particular professions, right? Yeah. And so again, just to quote Michelle Harvey, the question is not what would we be doing with them, but what would we be doing without them? Without them, it really would be a gap that we really could not fill. And so states need to step up and do all they can to support that.
And Michelle, talk about too about how, the reason why I bring up like the emphasis on the research and the sciences, just like what the senator was saying, is because that's where the money's at, right? I mean, we have to have that conversation about also how do we, not just about funding the research or, improving the facilities, which we need to do, but it's also providing the resources for students from especially these very distressed, underserved communities like a Black student going into higher education today. They're going to want to know, their family's going to want to know, how do we pay for this? Talk about that challenge, particularly as you're trying to, create that pipeline, this really ambitious, bold pipeline through the college access program. Oh, Michelle, we have you on mute. Let's see if we can get you off mute. There we go.
Sorry about that. Trying to be respectful of the other speakers, but Charles, you have mentioned one point that we're finding in our college access program. We've identified it as gap funding. Look at organizations like the historic United Negro College Fund, a lot of these, the Thurgood Marshall Foundation, they are all focused on retention, helping students to stay engaged and enrolled.
Hold on, Michelle, hold that thought. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just realized I have to go into a break. Michelle, hold that thought. When we come back, we'll continue that thought. Let's just take a real quick break, and we'll be right back with our HBCU Week panel. Stay right there. Sorry about that, Michelle. I just producer. Yeah, he clipped me. So he's like, break. So I had to reach. Stay right there. Hold that thought, though. We're going to come back with that thought, and then we'll just do one last round, everyone. And We have about like just 10 more minutes to go.
Okay.
It's going well. I wanted to mention, Mr. Baker, just to kind of add to what you were saying as well, particularly for 1890s, there's a question of access in the language of laws I'm speaking specifically like for the Farm Bill. Sometimes in the language, there's not access for HBCUs or 1890s. And so, you know, we are aware of that, and we can bring that to the forefront so that maybe some of those things can be changed or opened up. You know,
and I think, you know, that's why we want to have folks early in the decision-making process. And I'll mention it here too, but, you know, with Tony Allen from Delaware State being the chair of the HBCU board council, I think that will give a lot of credibility, especially for 1890s, to be able to have a voice in that room and be a part of that rulemaking process, how these dollars are going to be spent, and advising on that. I think that's going to be a very important piece of it.
Yeah. Stand by, everyone. I'll let you know when we come back on. Appreciate the on break chat. Okay, and you guys can keep talking too if you want until we come up, but I'm going to interrupt you as soon as the producer gives me the cue. Stand by. WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media. Welcome back to our hashtag HBCU Week live discussion, live broadcast panel here on the value of HBCUs in the 21st century, trying to capture as much as we can in this hour here on our Thursday edition of Reality Check. I want to thank our partners, Council of State Governments, Eastern Regional Conferences, Council on Communities of Color. Thank you, WN Page, for setting this up as well. And the chair, State Senator Kevin Parker from New York, who's on panel with us. Also, the 1890 Foundation, 1890 Universities Foundation, partnering up to make this conversation possible. Go to 1890foundation.org. And I want to thank the Learn for Life College Access Program, learnforlife.org. Hashtag HBCU Week for more of that discussion on HBCUs during this HBCU Week. There's a lot of them going on, and that's being carried out by the White House initiative on HBCUs. And so we appreciate that constant awareness surrounding our historically Black colleges and universities. Go ahead, Michelle. You had a thought that you were finishing up, and I do apologize for having to go to break suddenly and cutting you off, but go ahead and finish.
No worries, Charles. I was just talking about gap funding, how some of the larger institutions, they are very much focused on the retention of students, but there is a need of students who are facing challenges to have things like, personal products or a plane ticket home during a vacation. Those are things that, believe it or not, will prohibit students from leaving their hometowns and going to HBCUs. So here at Learn for Life, we want to make sure that we create a pathway through the college access program. That's, access is key. It is the word that has the most meaning for students that we deal with. And and that we work with, let me say that, because you have never seen a group of students like those that we see at Learn for Life. They may have dropped out previously, pregnant, parenting. They bring all of these challenges to the table, but then through a flexible one-on-one program, they are able to work with their supervising teacher, get wraparound supports, all of these things that are needed, and they are successful and they graduate. But we have a responsibility to our youth, Charles, and it doesn't stop with a high school diploma. And so we want to make sure that our students are taking advantage of post-secondary opportunities and in places that nurture students who come to the table with challenges. HBCUs are known for that. I'm a graduate of Winston-Salem State University, Enter, Learn, Depart to Serve. I have spoken with several colleagues who are now in professional roles who took that Depart to Serve seriously. And they have worked over 30 years serving communities of color, serving educational institutions, making sure that students get what they need. So we want to make sure that we are raising money, and I'm so grateful for whomever put in the chat, Jack and Jill of America. They do have gap funding for HBCUs. I found that out just through checking the chat, and I will be reaching out to Jack and Jill of America. Also, why I have the table, let me say something. There's 6 degrees of separation just here in this Zoom call. My daughter went to Medgar Evers Preparatory Academy in Brooklyn, New York. I used to live in Flatbush. And so I'm very aware of some of the synergy that exists between the preparatory high school and the college. So hopefully that we'll talk about some of those pathways for students to help them get to our HBCUs, because they are true institutions of learning. I just had a colleague tell me, she was on a Tesla call, that they are interested in HBCUs because of the STEM fields that HBCUs cover. They can't do recruitment at some of these other colleges, but they know if they go to a North Carolina A&T or a FAMU, they're going to find what they need. So there is a value. I'm glad that there's a renewed interest in HBCUs.
And in fact, I want to go around the table too while we've got about 5 more minutes or so, really 5 more minutes, so we got to keep it tight. I do want to ask everyone about, and I'll start with, go back to you, Trey. The president called it this code red moment with climate crisis. He just did that the other day while he was in the Mid-Atlantic region. And so how do you think these special institutions, HBCUs, what's that conversation like about HBCUs playing a role in tackling and addressing climate crisis?
HBCUs can have a very strong role. Again, not just because they're the sponsoring unit here, but the 1890s, especially, and the work that the Council on 1890s, Dr. Abdullah from Virginia State is doing, they can have a really great impact on this. There are many HBCUs that have been named Centers of Excellence from the Department of Homeland Security. We have actually an HBCU grad who's running our EPA at this point. And so there are going to be opportunities down the line for the institutions to be able to be a very important part of this fight. The other part of it is, we're right there on the nexus of environmental justice also. And helping communities that have historically been polluted by bad corporate actors and others. And, HBCUs will be able to help fight those fights, be able to identify communities that have been brownfields and Superfund sites, and be able to provide the assistance for their communities, because a lot of times the HBCUs sit in some of those communities. When you think about my hometown back in Mississippi, that recently had an issue around environmental justice. We're right there, about 30 minutes away from Mississippi Valley State.
And real quick too, Vonda, because I did see this question from Junior Lee here, Word TV audience viewer. he wants to know about the 1890 land grants. Do they utilize or give out 100% of their scholarship funds? If so, how long does it take? Or if not, why? I do hear that question frequently from a lot of people when we start talking about all this money going to HBCUs and how do we get students' education paid for? There's a lot of money floating around, and it's just your quick parting thoughts, Vonda, on how we make sure that students are accessing those funds, especially if they're trying to go to an 1890 land grant university and get a degree in those biodiversity, agriculture, science fields.
Great question. I'm not directly engaged with students being an extension, but I am party to those conversations. Yeah. And there is quite a bit of money on the table, and those dollars are going out the door. It goes back to recruiting and being able to attract students to those to some of those majors. We've had the historical stigma of agriculture and people leaving the farm, but the fact is people have to eat every day, and there are numerous opportunities within the supply chain in agriculture, in academia, policy making, social and environmental justice, and so it boils down to recruitment and people being aware that these scholarships are available. Here at FAMU, we've been pretty successful at getting our monies out of the door, but it boils down to marketing and being able to recruit those students.
And I'm gonna give you 30 seconds, Senator, as we wrap up this conversation. Last word as far as getting a national conversation going among state legislators, especially Black state legislators, about how to leverage these HBCUs. Is that happening? What's that framework look like for you?
Well, it's going to start, I think, with the Eastern Regional Conference and the conversations that we're having there. But all of us have to kind of infuse it in our conversation, particularly as we deal with the climate crisis. The climate crisis is both a crisis, but also an opportunity. It's going to be full-time jobs at a living wage with benefits. If you look in China, as they deal with the climate crisis, if you look at the vast majority of their millionaires, there are people who have actually made economic gains by actually addressing the climate problems in China. We in our community could do the same thing. Van Jones talked about that in his book, almost 10 years ago, and it remains true at this moment.
Yeah. Okay. New York State Senator Kevin Parker, chair of the Council on Communities of Color at the Council of State Governments Eastern Regional Conference. He gets the last word. Also, Trey Baker, thanks for joining us from the White House Office on Public Engagement, works on HBCUs, got a very busy HBCU week ahead of him. So I really appreciate his time this afternoon. Michelle Crumpton-Harvey is director of the College Access Program at Learn for Life. Go to learnforlife.org for more information. She's also the vice president of expansion and innovation there. She's in California. Vonda Richardson, director of the Cooperative Extension Program down there in Florida at Florida A&M University in the College of Agricultural Science. Thank you all for joining us for this exclusive HBCU Week panel, The Value of HBCUs in the 21st Century. I want to thank Debbie Ann Page, the Council on Communities of Color, once more. I'm Charles Ellis. I'm signing off, and we're headed into The Source with Andrea Lawful-Sanders coming up next here on WURD. I want to thank all our participants and viewers and listeners for keying into this discussion. Go to hashtag HBCU Week for the rest of this HBCU Week. Philly and beyond, I want you to stay sharp, stay smart, but more importantly, please, everyone, stay safe out there. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you, God willing, on Monday, 10 a.m. sharp. Take care. Thanks, everyone. Real good.
Thank you, Charles.
Appreciate you. All right. We'll be in touch. Maybe we'll do another discussion in the future real soon. Thanks again for your time, everyone. That was beautiful. That was wonderful. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.